They told him only their gods could wear this armor. Armor that burned anyone else alive. Armor forged before the stars themselves were born. He wasn't a god. He wasn't even one of them. But when the temple doors opened and the light touched his skin, the armor began to hum, louder and louder. Every alien in the hall fell to their knees, and then, as his hand touched the cold metal, something inside the armor opened its eyes. The rain fell hard against the alien city, each drop turning to steam as it hit the glowing stone streets. Captain Elias moved through the mist, his boots echoing in the silence. Round him, tall alien warriors in black and gold armor kept their distance. They walked in perfect formation, their eyes never meeting his. They weren't guards. Were escorts, and their tense movements told him they feared the place they were taking him. The air felt heavier with every step. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing faintly as if alive. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled. But it didn't sound like any thunder Elias had ever heard on Earth. It was deeper, like the growl of something ancient. At last, they reached a towering set of doors carved from dark stone. Each slab was covered in runes that shone faintly in the dim light, the patterns shifting when he tried to focus on them. Without a word, two warriors stepped forward and pushed the doors open. A rush of cold air spilled out, carrying with it a smell that was both metallic and sweet, like blood mixed with flowers. Elias stepped inside, and the world beyond the threshold felt wrong. The ground was smooth black marble, polished until it reflected everything like water. The air was so still that even his breathing sounded loud. In the center of the room, on a raised pedestal, stood the armor. It wasn't like the bulky combat suits humans built. This armor was alive. It glimmered. Silver under the light, but faint rivers of gold ran through its plates, glowing softly, pulsing like veins. The chest plate was shaped with a perfect symmetry that felt more like art than war. The helmet had two sweeping crests that almost looked like horns, curving back like the crown of some forgotten king. Elias could swear he felt it watching him, even though it stood motionless. Every alien in the room kept their gaze low, as if afraid to meet its sight. The alien leader stepped forward, a tall figure draped in ceremonial cloth over his armor. His voice was deep and heavy, like the weight of mountains. "Only our gods can wear this armor," the leader said. His eyes were hard, but there was fear in them. Those who try without the blessing of the gods are burned alive. Not even our strongest warriors dare touch it. He paused, his gaze locking on Elias. "Yet, the armor is called for you." Elias frowned. "Called for me? I'm not even one of you." "Why would it?" He stopped mid-sentence. There was a sound low and deep, like a whisper made of thunder. It came from the armor. He took a slow step forward. The air around it was colder now, sharp against his skin. Could feel the pull, like a magnet inside his chest. The leader raised his hand in warning. "Step closer, and you may not leave this place alive." But Elias couldn't stop. His heart pounded, his fingers tingled, and every instinct screamed that something inside that armor was aware of him and wanted him closer. The leader's voice cut through the silence. "Do you know our history, human? Do you know why this armor has remained untouched for 10,000 years?" Elias shook his head, but the alien continued anyway. "It was forged in the heart of a dying star by the first of our gods. It ended wars that burned entire galaxies, slaughtered beasts that swallowed moons. But when the gods vanished, the armor remained, and it began to choose. Those it rejected died screaming as fire filled their bodies. Those it accepted never returned." The last words hung heavy in the air. Elias stood at the base of the pedestal now. The armor loomed over him, gleaming faintly. He reached out his hand without thinking, and the hum grew louder, resonating in his bones. He could feel something. Inside it, something vast and ancient pressing against the edges of his mind. The alien warriors shifted uneasily, some stepping back toward the doors. The leader's voice rose sharply. "Human, stop. This is not your destiny." Elias ignored him. His hand was inches from the chest plate now. The cold radiating from it made his skin ache, but beneath the chill was a heat, like a heartbeat made of molten metal. A flicker of gold light rippled across its surface, and for the briefest moment, the armor's as if they were eyes flashed open. The hum became a roar inside his head. His vision blurred, and he saw flashes of battle worlds burning, gods falling. The armor cutting through shadows like sunlight through glass. He stumbled back, gasping for air, but his eyes stayed locked on it. The leader stepped forward, placing himself between Elias and the pedestal. His voice was almost a growl. If you wish to touch it, you must prove yourself worthy. 3 trials await you. Fail, and your ashes will join the dust of the unworthy. The words were a challenge, but also a warning. Elias looked past him, eyes fixed on the armor, and felt that pull again. Deep inside, he already knew. Whatever those trials were, whatever dangers lay ahead, he was going to touch it. He was going to wear it. And whatever happened after, nothing in this galaxy would be the same. The courtyard was silent, except for the rain and the slow crackle of the blue torches along the walls. Elias stood there, catching his breath, water dripping from his hair, his muscles aching from the fight. The champion's eyes stayed on him. For a long moment, unreadable, before the massive alien turned away and disappeared into the shadows beyond the archway. The leader stepped forward, his cloak heavy with rain, and spoke in a voice that carried both urgency and warning. The armor's hum grows stronger by the hour. That means the darkness has felt its awakening. We do not have the time it had hoped for. Before Elias could ask what he meant, a horn sounded in the distance, deep, drawn out, and filled with dread. The leader's head snapped toward the sound. 2 alien scouts ran into the courtyard, their armor streaked with rain and mud. One dropped to a knee before speaking quickly in their language. Elias couldn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. He could read the fear in their faces. The leader turned to him, his voice sharp. The darkness has sent its heralds. They are already in our skies. Elias glanced upward, and through the swirling clouds he caught glimpses of them, vast shadow shapes, gliding silently. Blocking out pieces of the night, their edges shimmering like oil on water, the leader motioned for Elias to follow, and they moved through narrow torchlit halls until they reached another chamber, deep within the temple. This one was smaller than the first, but the air inside was warm and heavy, thick with the scent of burning herbs. In the center of the floor was a circular platform carved from a single slab of dark crystal, its surface etched with spiraling patterns that seemed to twist when he looked too long. The leader stopped at the edge and turned to Elias. This is the trial of the heart. The first trial proved your body could endure. This one will decide if your spirit can withstand the weight of what you seek. The armor will not open to those whose hearts are bound only to themselves. Elias stepped forward slowly. And what happens if I fail? The leader's expression didn't change. Then the armor will show you every fear you have ever buried, until you are lost inside them. Without another word, he gestured toward the platform. Elias stepped onto it, and the moment his boots touched the crystal, the air shifted. The warm scent of the herbs vanished, replaced by the dry, sharp smell of smoke. The walls of the chamber melted away into darkness. At first, there was silence. Then faint whispers, dozens, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once, too low to make out the words. Shapes began to take form in the dark, shifting and flickering like shadows caught in firelight. Elias took a step forward and found himself standing in the ruins of a city. Not an alien city, Earth. Broken towers jutted up into the sky, smoke curling from blackened windows. The streets were cracked and littered with debris. Far away, he could see the glow of fires spreading across the horizon. The whispers grew louder, and now they carried voices he knew. He turned sharply at the sound of his sister's voice calling his name. She stood in the middle of the street, her clothes torn, blood streaked across her face. Elias, help me. He ran toward her, but as he got closer, shadows rose from the cracks in the ground tall, twisted figures with long claws and no faces. They closed around her, pulling her back into the smoke. Elias shouted and lunged forward. But the street seemed to stretch endlessly no matter how fast he ran. The whispers became screams. He saw friends, comrades, people from his past, all swallowed by the same darkness. Something inside him told him it wasn't real. But it felt real. The weight in his chest, the ache in his lungs, the burning in his muscles, it all felt true. A voice rose above the chaos, deep and cold, and it came from everywhere at once. Strength without heart is nothing. Heart without sacrifice is nothing. Will you bleed for them, even when it is not your war? Elias stopped running, looked around at the shadows closing in, then back toward the place where his sister had vanished. Slowly, he dropped to one knee and pressed his hand against the broken ground. I'll fight for them, all of them. Even if it's not my war, even if I fall doing it. The ground shook under his palm, and a crack of golden light split the street. The shadows hissed and burned away, the fires died, and the ruins dissolved back into the warm torchlight of the temple. Elias was kneeling on the crystal platform again, his hand still pressed to its surface. The leader stood watching him from the edge of the circle. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the leader gave a small nod. He did not run from their pain. The armor will remember that. The hum in Ilias's chest was louder now, almost alive, and though his body felt drained, there was a strange calm in him. But before he could take a breath, the horn outside sounded again, this time faster, sharper, and filled with alarm. The leader's face hardened. The darkness is here. We have one trial left. I have no more time than the length of a single storm. The courtyard was silent, except for the rain and the slow crackle of the blue torches along the walls. Elias stood there, catching his breath, water dripping from his hair, his muscles aching from the fight. The champion's eyes stayed on him. For a long moment, unreadable, before the massive alien turned away and disappeared into the shadows beyond the archway. The leader stepped forward, his cloak heavy with rain, and spoke in a voice that carried both urgency and warning. The armor's hum grows stronger by the hour. That means the darkness has felt its awakening. You do not have the time I had hoped for. Before Elias could ask what he meant, a horn sounded in the distance, deep, drawn out, and filled with dread. The leader's head snapped toward the sound. 2 alien scouts ran into the courtyard, their armor streaked with rain and mud. One dropped to a knee before speaking quickly in their language. Elias couldn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. He could read the fear in their faces. The leader turned to him, his voice sharp. The darkness has sent its heralds. They are already in our skies. Elias glanced upward, and through the swirling clouds he caught glimpses of them, vast shadow shapes, gliding silently. Blocking out pieces of the night, their edges shimmering like oil on water, the leader motioned for Elias to follow, and they moved through narrow torchlit halls until they reached another chamber, deep within the temple. This one was smaller than the first, but the air inside was warm and heavy, thick with the scent of burning herbs. In the center of the floor was a circular platform carved from a single slab of dark crystal, its surface etched with spiraling patterns that seemed to twist when he looked too long. The leader stopped at the edge and turned to Elias. This is the trial of the heart. The first trial proved your body could endure. This one will decide if your spirit can withstand the weight of what you seek. The armor will not open to those whose hearts are bound only to themselves. Elias stepped forward slowly. And what happens if I fail? The leader's expression didn't change. Then the armor will show you every fear you have ever buried, until you are lost inside them. Without another word, he gestured toward the platform. Elias stepped onto it, and the moment his boots touched the crystal, the air shifted. The warm scent of the herbs vanished, replaced by the dry, sharp smell of smoke. The walls of the chamber melted away into darkness. At first, there was silence. Then faint whispers, dozens, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once, too low to make out the words. Shapes began to take form in the dark, shifting and flickering like shadows caught in firelight. Elias took a step forward and found himself standing in the ruins of a city. Not an alien city, Earth. Broken towers jutted up into the sky, smoke curling from blackened windows. The streets were cracked and littered with debris. Far away, he could see the glow of fires spreading across the horizon. The whispers grew louder, and now they carried voices he knew. He turned sharply at the sound of his sister's voice calling his name. She stood in the middle of the street, her clothes torn. Blood streaked across her face. "Elias, help me." He ran toward her, but as he got closer, shadows rose from the cracks in the ground tall, twisted figures with long claws and no faces. They closed around her, pulling her back into the smoke. Elias shouted and lunged forward. But the street seemed to stretch endlessly no matter how fast he ran. The whispers became screams. He saw friends, comrades, people from his past, all swallowed by the same darkness. Something inside him told him it wasn't real. But it felt real. The weight in his chest, the ache in his lungs, the burning in his muscles, it all felt true. A voice rose above the chaos, deep and cold, and it came from everywhere at once. Strength without heart is nothing. Heart without sacrifice is nothing. Will you bleed for them, even when it is not your war? Elias stopped running, looked around at the shadows closing in, then back toward the place where his sister had vanished. Slowly, he dropped to one knee and pressed his hand against the broken ground. "I'll fight for them, all of them. Even if it's not my war, even if I fall doing it." The ground shook under his palm, and a crack of golden light split the street. The shadows hissed and burned away, the fires died, and the ruins dissolved back into the warm torchlight of the temple. Elias was kneeling on the crystal platform again, his hand still pressed to its surface. The leader stood watching him from the edge of the circle. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the leader gave a small nod. He did not run from their pain. Armor will remember that. The hum in Ilias's chest was louder now, almost alive, and though his body felt drained, there was a strange calm in him. But before he could take a breath, the horn outside sounded again, this time faster, sharper, and filled with alarm. The leader's face hardened. "The darkness is here. We have one trial left. I have no more time than the length of a single storm." The temple shook with the echo of the horn, a deep rolling sound that seemed to crawl through the stone itself. Elias rose to his feet, still feeling the warmth of the crystal platform beneath his hands, fading into the chill air.
Ow.
Voice was urgent now, his tone stripped of ceremony. "The shadows are at our gates. We have no more days, no more hours, only what is left of this storm." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and strode down the narrow hallway that led deeper into the heart of the temple. The air grew hotter with every step. The flicker of torchlight replaced by a red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat against the dark walls. Somewhere ahead, a low, constant roar grew louder. A sound Elias recognized not as machinery or wind, but as the endless rush of fire. They emerged into a cavern so vast that the ceiling was lost in black smoke. The heat hit Elias like a wave, searing the air from his lungs. In the center of the cavern was a pit of living flame blue at its heart, shifting to gold at its edges, each flicker casting wild shadows across the walls. The ground around it was cracked and scorched, the heat warping the air above it. The leader stopped at the edge of the stone platform that circled the pit. "This is the forge of the gods," he said, his voice carrying over the roar. "Trial of the soul. Here the armor was born in the heart of a dying star. Here its spirit still sleeps. If you are unworthy, the flame will devour you before you can scream. If you are worthy, the fire will take you and return you whole." Elias stared into the flames. They didn't burn like any fire he had ever seen. They moved like liquid, flowing and folding over themselves, shapes forming and dissolving. In an instant, for a heartbeat, he thought he saw faces in the fire, eyes watching him from within the glow. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. The leader's expression was stone. "Then you may walk away, and watch as our city, our people, and perhaps your own world are swallowed by the darkness. Choice is an illusion here, human. There is only forward." Without another word, Elias stepped onto the narrow bridge of stone that jutted out over the pit. The heat was unbearable now, each breath tasting of metal and smoke. Sweat streamed down his face, but the hum in his chest was louder than ever, vibrating through his bones. At the center of the bridge, there was nothing to hold on to, just a single flat space above. the roiling heart of the flame. The leader's voice carried to him from the edge. "Kneel. Place your hands in the fire." Elias dropped to one knee. The heat clawed at his skin, every instinct in his body screaming to turn back, but he forced his hands forward. The moment his fingers touched the blue fire, agony ripped through him, pure, unrelenting, all-consuming. It was not the burn of flesh, but the burning of everything he was. The fire digging into his thoughts, his memories, his fears. Images flashed in his mind, his failures, his regrets, every face he had lost. The fire whispered to him, 1,000 voices all speaking at once. "You are too small, too weak. This power will break you." His first instinct was to pull away, but something deep inside pushed back. Through the pain, he forced his thoughts to the people he had sworn to protect, the sister he had seen in the vision, the faces of comrades who had trusted him, even the aliens who now stood on the edge of destruction. His voice came out as a hoarse whisper, but it was steady. "If I burn fighting." The flames surged higher, wrapping around his arms, climbing to his shoulders, his chest. His vision went white, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. Then, slowly, the pain changed. The fire was no longer tearing him apart. It was holding him, shaping him, like molten metal being reforged. The blue flames turned gold, curling around his body in slow spirals before sinking into his skin and vanishing. When Elias opened his eyes, the cavern was silent. He was kneeling on the stone bridge, his hands resting on the warm surface. The leader stood at the edge, his eyes wide in something close to awe. "The fire has accepted you," he said, almost to himself. "It has not done so in 10,000 years." The hum in Elise's chest had become a steady, powerful beat, like the pulse of some great engine. He stood slowly, turning to face the leader. "Then it's time," Elias said. But before the leader could speak, a deep rumble shook the cavern. A crack of dark lightning split the air outside, its light bleeding even into the depths of the temple. A scout's voice echoed down the hallway. "The darkness has breached the outer walls." The leader's gaze hardened. "Then we have no more trials to give you. The armor must decide now, or we all die." The storm outside the temple had become a living thing, its roar filling the halls as Elias followed the leader back toward the great chamber. The walls trembled with every strike of the black lightning, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of charged energy. The hum inside Elias's chest was no longer faint. It was steady and powerful, like the heartbeat of something far larger than himself. The closer they came to the pedestal, the stronger it grew, until the vibration seemed to fill the very stones beneath their feet. The great doors to the chamber swung open with a groan, and there it was, the armor standing in the center of the room exactly as before, but it was no longer silent. The silver plates pulsed with golden light, and each pulse seemed to answer the beat inside. Elias. The alien warriors who had been stationed around the room were no longer standing tall. Many were on one knee, their heads bowed, their weapons lowered in a show of reverence or fear. The leader stopped a few steps away from the pedestal and turned to Elias. "The trials are done. The fire has claimed you. Now the armor will decide." His tone was heavy with both pride and dread. Elias stepped forward slowly, his boots clicking against the polished stone. Every step seemed to make the hum grow louder until it was no longer sound, but a feeling that filled his skull. When he reached the pedestal, he stopped and stared at the armor, up close. It was even more magnificent, every curve of the silver plates etched with lines so fine they seemed woven like cloth, each glowing vein alive, a shifting light. He raised his hand, and the air between them sparked faintly, a ripple passing over his skin. The moment his fingers brushed the surface of the chest plate, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sharp metallic hiss, the armor moved. The pieces lifted from the pedestal as if pulled by invisible hands, each one twisting in the air before locking onto his body. The first plate touched his chest, and a surge of heat and energy shot through him, so strong it forced him to his knees. His breath caught, but there was no only power, raw and endless, flowing through his veins. One by one, the pieces came to him. Gauntlets that sealed over his hands with a satisfying click. Boots that locked around his legs with the weight of solid stone but the ease of air. A helmet that descended over his head and sealed with a faint glow along the edges. When the last piece settled into place, the golden veins running through the armor blazed brighter than ever. Casting long shadows on the walls, the alien warriors gasped, and the leader took a single step back. His voice was low, almost reverent. "The god warrior walks again." Elias straightened, the weight of the armor somehow both heavy and effortless. His vision through the helmet was crystal clear, every detail sharpened, every movement in the room slowed to a graceful pace. He could feel the energy in the air, the heat of the storm. Beyond the walls, the faint tremor of fear in the hearts of those around him. Suddenly, a deafening boom shook the temple. The massive stone doors at the far end splintered inward, and a wave of freezing air swept through the chamber. Out of the darkness beyond, shadowed figures began to emerge, tall, thin, and wrong. Their bodies shifting and warping as if they were made of smoke and bone. Their eyes burned like distant stars, cold and merciless. The warriors in the chamber raised their weapons, but the leader's gaze stayed fixed on Elias. The darkness is here. The armor has chosen. Now it is time to see if it chose well. Elias stepped forward, the floor trembling under his boots.
House.
The shadows hissed, their forms stretching and twisting as they closed the distance. Somewhere deep inside, the armor spoke not in words, but in an ancient, resonant tone that filled his mind. It offered no instructions, no warnings, only a single, undeniable truth. This is what you were made for. He clenched his fists, feeling the golden energy gather around them, arcs of light snapping in the air. The first of the shadow creatures lunged, its claws raised, and Elias met it head-on. His strike landed with the force of a falling star, the creature exploding into fragments of black dust that burned away before they hit the ground. The others paused as if shocked, but only for a heartbeat before they surged forward. Behind him, the leader's voice rang out, rallying his warriors to hold the line. But Elias no longer heard them. The hum of the armor had become a roar, the energy within it flowing through every nerve and muscle. The shadows came at him in waves, but with each strike he moved faster, hit harder, his blows cutting through them like fire through dry grass. And for the first time since setting foot on this world, he understood what it meant when the alien had said only gods could wear this armor. Outside, through the cracks in the shattered doorway, the sky was alive. With darkness, this was only the first wave. The storm outside raged louder with every passing heartbeat, the black lightning striking so close the walls trembled. Inside the temple, the clash had become chaos shadow creatures, pouring through the shattered doors in endless waves. There, clawed hands tearing into stone as if it were soft clay. Elias moved through them like a living weapon, his armor blazing gold with every strike. He didn't think about where to move or when to strike. The armor seemed to know before he did, guiding his limbs with a precision that felt both alien and familiar. A single punch sent one shadow flying into the wall where it shattered into dust. A sweeping kick cut through three more before they could surround him. Each hit sent ripples of golden light through the air, the shockwaves rattling the temple pillars. The alien warriors fought beside him, but their weapons only slowed the creatures, cutting them apart for moments before the shadows twisted themselves whole again. Only Elias's strikes burned them to nothing. The leader barked orders, pulling the defenders into tighter formation around the pedestal as the dark tides surged. And then, over the din of battle, a sound tore through the air, a deep, resonant horn that made Ilias's bones vibrate. It came from outside, beyond the gates, and it wasn't a call to retreat. It was a summons. The leader's eyes flicked. To Elias, sharp and urgent, that is no herald. That is the master of the darkness. As if in answer, the ground shook beneath their feet, a slow, steady rhythm like the footsteps of something enormous. The shadow creatures stopped mid-attack, their heads turning toward the broken doors. From the storm outside, a shape began. to emerge first a towering silhouette, then the glint of armor blacker than the night sky, runes glowing crimson along its surface. It stepped into view, its massive frame filling the doorway, each movement silent despite its size. Its eyes to burning pits of deep red locked on Elias instantly. The warriors around him seemed to shrink in its presence. The leader's voice dropped to a near whisper, a Shadow Lord. I did not think they would risk sending one here. The creature's voice rolled through the chamber, low and cold. You wear the stolen armor of the gods? Remove it, or I will tear it from your corpse. Elias stepped forward, the golden glow of his own armor brightening in defiance. Come and try. The Shadow Lord moved faster than something that size should be able to, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. Its first strike was a downward blow with a jagged blade the size of a man, and Elias barely met it with his forearm guard. The impact rang through the temple like a bell, sending a shockwave that knocked several warriors off their feet. Elias felt the armor's energy surge to meet the force, and he pushed back, shoving the massive blade aside before slamming his fist into the Shadow Lord's chest. The golden impact flared, but the creature barely staggered. It laughed a low, rattling sound and swung again, this time with enough force to crack the stone floor where Elias had been standing a heartbeat before. They circled each other, the golden glow and crimson light casting long, clashing shadows on the walls. Round them the smaller shadow creatures swarmed the warriors. But the fight between Elias and the Shadow Lord had become the center of the storm. Each strike shook the chamber, sparks and fragments of stone raining down from the ceiling. The leader shouted over the roar, "You cannot win here. Take the fight outside." If the temple falls, we lose the armor's heart, Elias understood. Immediately, with a sharp burst of energy from his legs, he leaped backward through the shattered doorway, landing in the rain-soaked courtyard. The Shadow Lord followed, stepping into the open with the slow, deliberate stride of a predator certain of its kill. The storm howled around them, black lightning tearing across the sky, the rain hissing as it struck the glowing surfaces of their armor. Elias tightened his fists. The armor's hum had become something more, now a voice without words, a rush of instinct and resolve. He could feel every movement of the air, every shift in the Shadow Lord's stance. And somewhere beyond the storm, he felt the presence of more, hundreds more waiting for the outcome of this duel. The Shadow Lord's eyes narrowed, and it raised its blade in both hands. When they charged, the ground shook as if the world itself braced for the collision. The storm was no longer just a backdrop, it was a living wall of fury surrounding them. Black clouds twisting overhead, lightning shattering the sky in jagged flashes. The rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the courtyard stones slick and dark. But neither Elias nor the Shadow Lord seemed to notice. They moved with lethal intent, two forces of power colliding again and again. Each impact sent golden and crimson light exploding outward, the shockwaves rattling the nearby pillars and sending chunks of stone into the air. Elias's fists struck like hammers, every blow fueled by the armor's energy.
Ow.
But the Shadow Lord's black blade met him with equal force, its crimson runes flaring brighter with each swing. The courtyard floor cracked beneath their feet as they circled, each waiting for the smallest mistake. The Shadow Lord feinted left, then spun with terrifying speed, its blade cutting through the air in a deadly arc. Elias ducked low, feeling the heat of the blade pass over his helmet, and countered with a rising punch that connected squarely with the creature's jaw. The impact sent the Shadow Lord staggering back a step, a spray of dark mist spilling from its mouth before it steadied itself. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You strike like one who was born to this, but you are still mortal." Elias didn't answer. The armor pulsed around him, golden light racing along its etched veins, and he felt the strange connection deepen. He could sense the rhythm of the fight, now not just the movement of his enemy, but the weight of the storm itself, as if the world's heartbeat was syncing with his own. The Shadow Lord came again, blade raised high, and this time Elias didn't dodge. He caught the blade in both hands, the force of it driving him down to one knee, the ground cracking under him. For a moment, the Shadow Lord pressed harder, trying to crush him beneath the weapon's weight. Then Elias pushed back. Golden energy flared so bright, it lit the entire courtyard. And with a roar, he twisted, wrenching the blade free from the Shadow Lord's grip. It flew across the courtyard and slammed into the wall, embedding deep in the stone. The Shadow Lord staggered, unarmed for the first time, but it didn't retreat. Instead, its claws extended, each tip glowing with crimson fire, and it lunged. At Elias, with blinding speed, they collided in the center of the courtyard. Claws and fists striking faster than the eye could follow. Every hit from Elias sent cracks of light through the Shadow Lord's armor. Every slash from the Shadow Lord burned against Elias's plates, leaving faint smoking trails that the golden energy quickly sealed. Rain hissed on the heated metal, steam curling around them as the duel raged on. From the temple steps, the alien leader and his warriors watched in silence. This was no longer just a fight, it was a test of which force would break first. Lightning flashed above, illuminating the moment Elias caught the Shadow Lord's arm mid-swing, twisted, and drove a crushing knee into its chest. The sound was like stone shattering, and the Shadow Lord staggered back, coughing dark mist into the rain. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm. "You've said I'm mortal, but I fought my whole life knowing that. It's you who doesn't understand what that means." The golden light surged again, brighter than before, the armor almost singing now with power. The Shadow Lord hesitated. For the first time, its burning eyes narrowing as if recognizing something it could not control. And then Elias charged. He moved faster than the rain, faster than the lightning above, his strikes a blur of light and force. The Shadow Lord tried to block, tried to counter, but the golden storm inside Elias broke through every defense. Final, earth-shaking blow to the chest sent the Shadow Lord flying across the courtyard, its massive form slamming into the far wall with enough force to crack it from top to bottom. For a long moment, the creature lay still, the crimson glow in its eyes dimming. The aliens on the steps looked at Elias with something between awe and fear. The leader's voice was quiet, but heavy with meaning. "If the gods truly live, they will fear what they see tonight." But before Elias could answer, the ground beneath them rumbled, not from the storm, not from the duel, but from something rising in the darkness beyond the courtyard walls. Something far larger than the Shadow Lord, and it was coming. The rumble grew into a deep, constant vibration that shook the courtyard stones under their feet. Even the fallen Shadow Lord, still slumped against the wall, turned its dimming eyes toward the sound. Beyond the temple gates, the storm seemed to twist unnaturally, the black clouds folding inward, as if something enormous was forcing its way through. Lightning ripped across the sky, not in jagged flashes now, but in blinding, constant streams. The rain slowed, and then stopped altogether. The air hung heavy, charged with a power so ancient it made every warrior on the steps take a step back. From the darkness beyond the gates, a shape emerged so massive the courtyard suddenly felt like a child's playpen. It wasn't walking. It was gliding, its body a shifting mass of black metal and molten light. Dozens of eyes, each the size of a man's head, burned red along its body, blinking in patterns that seemed almost alive. The alien leader whispered the name like a curse, the Worldbinder. His voice trembled not with fear for himself, but with the knowledge that this thing could end every life here without a second thought. Elias stood his ground. The golden light of his armor was still bright, but he could feel its limits pressing, closer with every heartbeat. The Worldbinder stopped at the gates, its many eyes focusing on him alone. Its voice came not as sound, but as a pressure inside his skull, deep and absolute. The armor was forged for gods. "You are not one. Remove it, and I will spare this world." Elias almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've already decided what you'll take. I'm just here to tell you. It won't be me." The voice pressed harder, waves of power trying to force him to his knees. His legs shook under the weight, but the armor's hum rose in defiance. Golden arcs of light flickering off the plates. Behind him, the alien warriors braced themselves, weapons drawn. But they knew this fight was his alone, the Worldbinder. Moved impossibly fast, for something so large, a massive arm lashing out, black talons aiming to crush him in a single blow. Elias leaped forward instead of back, the golden light flaring so bright it burned the air. Slammed into the arm with all his strength, the impact sending a shockwave that flattened the rainwater on the stones and cracked the gate behind the creature. But the blow had cost him. He could feel the armor's energy draining faster now, the humming becoming a strained roar in his ears. The creature attacked again and again, each strike a mountain falling from the sky, and each time Elias met it. Golden and black power exploding where they collided. The courtyard was being torn apart, pillars collapsing, walls crumbling, but still he fought, every movement sharper, faster, more desperate. The world binder's many eyes blinked erratically now, as if the resistance was something it had never faced before, and then Elias felt it, the armor's true core. A heat and weight deeper than anything he'd touched so far. It wasn't just power, it was choice. He knew in that moment that he could burn it all at once, unleash everything in a single strike that might kill the world binder, and him with it. The armor didn't try to stop him, it simply waited. The alien leader's voice carried over, the roar of destruction. If you fall, human, we will remember your name. Elias grinned, the golden light spilling from every seam of the armor now, so bright it turned night into day. You'd better, he charged. The world binder moved to meet him, its massive form lowering like a tidal wave about to crash. Time seemed to slow. The storm froze mid-flash, and when they met in the center of the courtyard, the golden light erupted like a sun being born, swallowing the black metal, swallowing the rain, swallowing everything. The blast tore through the gates, through the walls, through the storm itself. When the light finally faded, the courtyard was silent. The world binder was gone, no body, no ash, not even a shadow. The armor lay on the cracked stones empty, its glow gone. And standing beside it, breathing hard, was Elias. Somehow, he was still alive. The alien leader stepped forward slowly, his voice quiet but heavy with awe. Perhaps the gods were wrong. Perhaps they were afraid of us, afraid of you. Elias looked at the fallen armor, then at the horizon where the storm had broken. If they are, they should be. The wind carried his words away into the clear night, and somewhere far beyond the stars, something listened.